Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Marklin Sangan from TechnoBuffalo, and this is Motorola's latest budget smartphone, the 2015 Moto G. I've had the chance to use this phone for about a week and a half, and I think it's time to give you guys our final thoughts on Motorola's latest budget smartphone. Motorola unveiled several new phones late last month during an event in New York City, and while we were really excited to see the new flagship Moto X device, it was really hard to be that excited about the Moto G. However, after playing with a new device for a few days, my expectations changed. It's actually a really good device despite it being an entry-level smartphone. Inside the Moto G, we have a quad-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 410 processor, 8GB or 16GB of expandable storage, up to 32GB, 1GB or 2GB of RAM, a 5-inch 720p display, a 2740 mAh battery, and it finally supports 4G LTE, but in return lacks NFC on board. The Moto G isn't the best looking phone on the market, though it's also not the worst you've seen. It's not crafted out of high-end materials like aluminum or glass, and is instead a mostly plastic and very plasticky feeling device. But for a $220 smartphone, you can't expect it to have the best features and hardware. The design change is very refreshing in my opinion. The back now features a crosshatch texture instead of the matte finish from previous iterations. And it's still removable and swappable. You can choose from 10 different colors, and each backplate will only cost you $15, which seems like a pretty reasonable price to me. Opening up the back, you'll actually see rubber gaskets along the top of the cover, which helps protect the phone from moisture. Drop it in a puddle or the toilet and you should be fine. We took it for a quick swim and it didn't run into any issues, but you're running the risk of damaging the phone should the back cover pop off. After removing the back panel, you'll be able to pop in your SIM card and also expand your storage via a micro SD card for up to 32GB, though a 64GB micro SD card we tested worked just fine. Probably the weakest part of the new Moto G would have to be the display. It's still a 5-inch 720p display, and it's not the prettiest display I've seen. Color reproduction isn't the best, text isn't as sharp, and the colors looked a bit washed out at times. Then again, it is a $220 smartphone, so I don't really have any reason to complain or compare it with other high-end displays I've seen and used. Plus, that 720p screen will help save on energy consumption, which translates to better battery life. In terms of overall performance, it's just fine. You'll be able to make calls, text, browse online, email no problem. The Snapdragon 410 processor works well, though it can be a bit sluggish when trying to play a graphics-heavy game like Vainglory. It works, it's just not as smooth as on more powerful devices. If you're just casually using the phone to check Twitter or Instagram or take pictures, it gets the job done no problem. Also, having LTE on a budget smartphone is big. This means you'll be able to browse the web and watch videos without having to wait too long for sites and videos to load. So let's chat battery life. The Moto G is packing a 2470 mAh battery, and it's not bad at all. It lasts the entire workday from 9 AM to 10 PM, which is perfectly fine for me. I'm on Twitter most of the time and making a few phone calls throughout the day, but how you use the phone will definitely affect the battery life. If you're constantly on your phone, checking email, Twitter, and taking a lot of pictures, that'll hit it. Unfortunately, there's no wireless charging or quick charge, even though the Snapdragon 410 chip was built to support faster charging, which isn't available on the Moto G. But I didn't expect those features to make it to a $200 smartphone. Needless to say, the battery life on the Moto G is decent. It'll last an entire day if you're not constantly tinkering with the device, though standby time is great. I could leave it on for a few days and still have enough juice to use it for an entire day the next day, which is very impressive. Probably one of the best things about the Moto G is the nearly pure stock Android experience. It's running Android 5.1.1 out of the box with a few customizations from Motorola such as Moto Assist, Action, and Active Display. Moto Active Display essentially allows you to quickly glance at notifications and the time without waking your phone. With Actions, you can simply flick of the wrist to activate the camera and chop twice to turn on the flashlight. With Assist, it'll basically change your phone's behavior based on a time of day, whether you're in a meeting or about to go to bed. The fact that it's running stock Android, the new Moto G could easily pass for an affordable Nexus device. And speaking of a Nexus device, the camera sensor on the Moto G is actually the same sensor that was used on the Nexus 6. The Moto G is rocking a 13 megapixel camera with dual LED flash, and I asked on Twitter what you guys wanted to see from the review, and a lot of you guys wanted to know how good or bad the camera is. To tell you the truth, the camera isn't bad, nor is it the best either. Motorola hasn't exactly impressed us with its camera the past couple of years, whether we were using the 2014 Moto X or the Nexus 6, but the Moto G has a pretty good camera for a $220 phone. The images we got out of the Moto G were detailed, though sometimes a bit washed out. Dynamic range isn't the best, though for a $220 phone it's impressive. Autofocus worked relatively well in quick and good lighting conditions, though it will hunt for focus in low light conditions. Motorola is using a customized version of Google's camera app, and it's very minimalistic, which means you can simply tap the screen to take a picture, and the settings are tucked away on the left-hand side of the screen, which you can enable things like HDR, flash, touch to focus, and change the aspect ratio. The front-facing camera isn't the best either. It's definitely mediocre at its best. The shots we saw seemed a bit too overprocessed for our taste, but we weren't expecting anything great. Again, the camera on the Moto G is not the best, but it's not the worst either. It gets the job done, and you'll be able to get some good shots that can easily pass for social media such as Instagram or Facebook. So to wrap it all up for you guys, I'm giving the 2015 Moto G a TechnoBuffalo score of 8 out of 10. The Moto G is a really good budget smartphone, as in surprisingly good. It's running an almost stock Android 5.1.1, it has LTE, good battery life, expandable storage, and a decent camera, and it's only $220. Of course, you can't have a $220 phone without trade-offs. One, the display isn't the best. A 720p resolution on a 5-inch display looks horrible. Also, the lack of NFC and quick charge may be a deal breaker for some people. Still, the 2015 Moto G is arguably the best bang for your buck as of right now. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and we will see you guys in the next one.